Hello and welcome to the Franz van Kat interview. I'm Annette Young. As the Syrian military tightens its deadly grip in Babi Amir in the city of Homs, the United Nations Human Rights Council has just voted to condemn Bashar al-Assad's government. But what impact, if any, will this non-binding measure actually have, especially with Russia and China once more voting against the move? This as across the world, people look on in horror as Assad's troops continue to pound the besieged neighbourhood of Babi Amir. So again, the talk continues, but just how long for? Joining me now from Geneva is Kunhua Kang, the UN Deputy High Commissioner for Human Rights. Thank you so much for being with us. Firstly...
My pleasure.
Firstly, what impact, if any, will this measure actually have?
Well, this vote comes at a very important time when a very critical political process has just begun with the special envoy of the Secretary General and the last Secretary General in the person of Mr. Kofi Annan. And I think with this resolution, that is a stronger message than any previous resolutions passed by the special sessions of the Council. If you see the support, it has really grown for condemnation and for a call to an immediate halt to the violence and the attacks. And the call now for an immediate halt, but also unfettered access for humanitarian assessment and delivery of the goods. So I think this resolution not only sends a stronger message from the Council, but also reinforces the mandate of the special envoy as he starts to his dialogue with the Syrian authorities.
But you appreciate, given that there seems to be deepening divisions between the US and its allies on one side and Russia, China and Iran and others on the other, that some would see this as just another empty gesture which is not going to bring an end to the violence.
I don't think it's an empty gesture. I think, first of all, it's very important for the international community to send the message to the victims suffering on the ground, the protesters, the human rights defenders, the journalists, that the international community is following very closely with a great deal of frustration, certainly, but the advocacy on their behalf and the international community is very seriously engaged is the minimal that we have to do. Of course, the hope is that the authorities will register this aspiration and take the appropriate action, first of all, to halt the violence and to open up access to the humanitarian actors at this point.
But it's clear that Assad is going to see this through to the very bitter end. What can be done to ensure that the guns are halted, at least temporarily, to allow assistance to get through to those civilians?
I think the international community has to keep up the pressure, and the pressure is growing. The support, as I said, for these resolutions have increased over the past series of resolutions, and this has to be kept up. And I think the more the international community speaks with one voice, the stronger that message is and the stronger the pressure is.
But we're hearing reports from groups close to the rebels, again stressing that these are unconfirmed reports, that the army in Babi Amir is now actually beginning to behead civilians. Is your body able to get a clear picture of what exactly is happening on the ground?
Yes, we are also registering very disturbing reports, unconfirmed at this point, unverified, because the situation is very confusing. But all the more the reason that the voice has to be ratcheted up and strengthened and the pressure kept up.
But isn't it impossible to get anything substantial done at the UN level when Russia and China continue to block any moves?
I understand there is now a new draft resolution addressing this increasing human rights, not only the human rights crisis, but a humanitarian crisis that is unfolding in Syria. And I very much hope that this time the Security Council will be able to act.
And is that resolution going to look at the idea of a humanitarian corridor? And is there a chance that Moscow is now increasingly moving or changing its position to support such a measure?
Well, here in the council, they had voted against, as they have in the past resolutions, but not against any humanitarian needs and the addressing of the crisis, but they voted against on the rationale that the text was not balanced. But the Russians and the Chinese have already indicated their support a humanitarian intervention in Syria from the with the United Nations at the lead.
What do you think would be the best way of implementing such a humanitarian corridor? And certainly at some point wouldn't involve some sort of military assistance.
I think currently the best way to do this is to really strengthen the hands of the Special Envoy, Mr. Kofi Annan. We had briefed him sufficiently before he went to New York to meet with the Secretary General and meet with the Security Council members on all the engagement that we have undertaken in the past months with the fact-finding missions and the support for the commissions of inquiry. So he has a full picture of what the human rights crisis has been, what is recent is the deteriorating humanitarian crisis. But the international community really now has to fall behind him and speak with one voice through him so he can be the effective mediator and get some positive action from the Syrian authorities.
It must be very frustrating for people such as yourself, especially given that Valerie Amos, the UN humanitarian coordinator, says Damascus have blocked her visit.
It is indeed frustrating, but frustration is no excuse for non-action. So we continue to do our job, and of course, it's not just the humanitarian access that has not been given. We've been asking for human rights monitoring access all along, and that also has never been given.
You know, and as we were just saying, the people in Babi Amir are pleading for assistance. How long do you think they're going to have to wait?
Shorter, hopefully, than longer. Very much the aspiration of all of us here in Geneva.
But is it not the concern when you hear from, for instance, Syria's main exiled opposition group, the Syrian National Council, announcing that it's forming a military bureau to try and unify armed resistance? I mean, clearly it's becoming a civil war.
I think that was a danger that we have alerted from the very beginning. Unless the claims to rights, the peaceful protest, the violent crackdown stops, inevitably this is the road that the situation is going to deteriorate into. And I think the High Commissioner has been making that alarm all along, and unfortunately it has evolved in that direction. And I think, but it's never too late to stop the violence.
Do you believe that Kofi Annan will be able to visit Damascus and, more importantly, places such as Homs?
We very much hope so. And again, the more he speaks and represents in his one voice the entirety of the international community, he has a better chance of getting that.
So what is the next move for your organisation?
We continue to monitor very closely, as we have all along. It's very increasingly difficult with the information sources themselves coming under attack as part of the bombings and so on and so forth. We are trying to establish contacts. We continue to keep the lines open with the activists and sources of information on the border areas. We have another engagement here in the Human Rights Council with the Commission of Inquiry reporting back for the second time on their findings to the Human Rights Council on March 12th. And that will perhaps lead to another resolution from the Human Rights Council.
But do you think will be able to get a sympathetic ear from the likes of Moscow and Beijing?
I think we very much hope so. That is the hope. I think it was very disappointing to see the two vetoes preventing the Security Council from acting. And next time around in the Security Council, we very much hope that will not be the case.
And as one UN official put it, they've chosen the wrong side of history. Is that what you believe to be the case?
Well, I think certainly from the human rights point of view, we would have wanted to see them on the other side.
And in terms of what you're doing on the ground, are you hopeful that at some point you'll be able to get your own people there in places such as Babi Amir?
That has been our call from the very beginning, first to monitor, and our experience has shown that having just monitors on the ground in very volatile situations have a preventive effect. So the immediate need now is for the violence to stop and for the humanitarian assistance to go in. But if in the longer term, and perhaps even with the humanitarian players, we very much want to be a part of that so that the assistance can be given in accordance with human rights standards.
Kung Wah Kang, I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for being with us. And that's it.
Thank you.
And that's it for this edition of the Franz van Kat interview. Stay tuned for more news and headlines, which are coming up very shortly.